All right, let's get a little bit more light in here. So, A Spirit's View of Reincarnation by JJ Morse. This is a 1973 pamphlet. It's saddle stitched, stapled in half. It's numbered 24 pages. And not a lot of illustration or photos in here. So largely just a text account of someone's impressions of their reincarnations, delivered in 1973. And let's see, we've got Evanston, Illinois limited edition books, and then there's a photo on the front. And I don't know, I don't know if they're going to give us any context for this photo. I'm going to guess this is Mr. JJ Morse without any further notes. A trance address through Mr. JJ Morse. Curious to see what kind of trance they were in. Now, I would love to show you more of the inside page here, the title page, but they glued the Psychic Studies Institute Inc. had this in their library, and they glued their little library pocket to the front page here, which I think was certainly a decision to make. I would have preferred they glue it here where there's absolutely nothing that they could be obscuring. I guess that would have been considered more flimsy. There's, they could have put it on the back page. There's really no other room in here for it. I'm not it's just a little bit bothersome. I can kind of see through the back here and see that there's really not too much text they were obscuring. At some point, I may try to get an idea of what information is back there, because this is the one place where the information, like where this was published and some other details, would be put. Everything else is going to be about their organization. So it's really annoying to me. So let's see. A Spirit's View of Reincarnation, a discourse by Tien San Ti through the mediumship of Mr. JJ Morse. And then, of course, it was bought by the Psychic Studies Institute, which also owned another pamphlet that I read the other day, actually. See, it's not this one, although that one might also be owned by them. Telepathy and Human Personality is also previously property of the Psychic Studies Institute. And I probably will look these people up sometime, because I'm very curious as to if any of that remains. Oh, this is Robert H. Ashby. This one has the address of the person who previously owned it, and I think it's different than the Psychic Studies Institute. I always see things like that, like people writing their names up top, and then there's sometimes little labels at the bottom of addresses or things. This one is a stamped label, so it was after this little booklet was created, and has nothing to do with the original creators. This one was originally from the Society for Psychical Research. So really would like to know what little society made this one. Might have to look them up. So, Reincarnation. I've never really seen it spelled like that with the dash in it. Reincarnation, invocation. Earnest heart and most sincere desire, let us seek by aspiration the inspiration of eternal truth, which shall come to each of us severally as we are capable of receiving it, and shall be used by each and all as our best wisdom may dictate. Let us trust that such inspirings may lead each and all of us into the ways of usefulness and the pleasant paths of peace and progress, that hands may be strengthened for the arduous labors of life, that minds may be illumined to see deeper still into the great principle of life, being, and humanity, and most all, that the soul may be touched with the new, wide, and fresh power kindled within it, so that even while encased in the bonds of flesh, it may penetrate the mist and darkness, and so pass in the great glory of that sweet beyond where man goes at death to live, progress and unfold, in greatness and goodness for all the ages of the future. Man, we put a lot on death, don't we? That this light and knowledge may come to each and all of you to bless, live, uplift, and strengthen you day by day is our earnest hope and trust tonight. I think all of these eras of spiritualism overlap with eras of not just war, but like war like we've never seen before. So this would be during the thick of the Vietnam uh, conflicts and surrounding conflicts, and I believe the Afghanistan oil wars with Russia would be cranking up around this point. So it's interesting that there's so much emphasis on, hey, there's going to be a good thing in the hereafter, because it's kind of like people have just kind of given up on there being a good thing in the physical world. It's disappointing. The discourse. Hey, everybody, it's the discourse. Welcome to Tumblr. It's the discourse. I have the discourse right here in a tract. Would you like to hear about the good words of the discourse? The principles of being express the purposes of God, and the laws of nature are the manifestation of those purposes in relation to yourselves. Hence it follows of necessity that all questions that pertain to the nature of man must be judged in the light of your knowledge of the principles of being and the laws of nature. Fanciful speculations may be, and doubtless are, helpful from time to time in leading you suggestively forward from the known to that which has to be known, but when the known has reached that which was not known, and the new knowledge is fairly in hand, then is the time to compare that new knowledge with the speculations or theories that have enabled you to bridge the gulf between the known and the unknown. And if the new knowledge does not agree with the old theories, no matter how beautiful those theories may appear to be, as honest souls, you must abandon the speculative and tentative in favor of the practical and demonstrative. True philosophy will ever invite you to follow the course we have laid down, because it is in accord with the laws of nature and the principles of being. To those who are acquainted with the truths of spirit communion, it will doubtless frequently have occurred that the inspirations and I really am interested in what you're saying, but when did you go down into trance? This is all just like something that he says sometime, and I have no idea why he says it, when he said it, who put him under. Like, that's really annoying. Can I see anything? Can you, like, God, can you reveal to me the knowledge of this tract? I don't think that's going to work. What if I could shine a light through it, like, really, really hard? Let's try that. Let's try just shining a light in my face. Oh, there is a little bit of text. Here we go. All right, everybody. We're beyond the veil now. Don't put stupid pockets on the top of text. August 4th, 1895. This was in August 4th, 1895. At the Cavendish Rooms, Mortimer Street, London. So this is from the 1800s. It's a reprint. That's why this text is like this. This is actually what do they call it whenever it's they're basically Xeroxing it. It's a facsimile edition. They took a facsimile of the original piece. That is why we have a name like Tien San Ti. I don't know how to pronounce that. There were a lot of Eastern masters in the 1800s giving channeled information to very English, often very white people. And this overlapped at the time that the British Empire was really like knees deep in India. So like that's suddenly a bunch of white people have access to India, and then suddenly they're all reincarnating discourse TNCNT. So that is like this is being said in the late 1800s, and there's like I'm glad that I was able to kind of see through the pocket thing here to figure that out, because this is definitely not words I would have expected to hear in 1973. People weren't talking about this in 1973. But in the late 1800s, they were really worried about World War One. A lot of these things got, by the way, people kind of think of this as going back to World War II or being World War II issues, but actually this stuff goes back to the Gilded Era and what brought the Gilded Era down, which was World War One. In fact, you can find a lot of discourse in these spiritual tracts and in spiritism and stuff that is, honest to goodness, Napoleonic Wars discourse. Like, we're still recovering from the psychological waves that Napoleon put on the populace, let alone anything that actually happened in modern day. But yeah, so I'm gonna skip through this a little bit. I don't quite feel like reading through the whole thing right now. Oh, here we go. Kardashian School. Are there Kardashians here? It's Kardecian. And that's just like right up here that I kind of glanced at that. I don't think it has anything to do with Kardashians, or it could. They could be the Illuminati. Random. Now, what is the theory of incarnation? It is somewhat difficult to define at present, and this brings us to the sole reference to the ancient side of the question we referred to a little while since. There are really two schools of reincarnationists, one representing the theosophy. Yep, this is theosophy. This is theosophical material. Representing the theosophy of our friends of the theosophical cult. These were spiritualists, so they weren't theosophists, but they're basically theosophists. One representing the reincarnationists of the Kardec cult, the Kardashians. And of course, there have been quite a number of reincarnationist philosophers who have blown bubbles on their own account. Blown bubbles. But these can be left to take care of themselves. Reincarnation implies that the soul or the spirit, whichever name you choose to give to the indwelling conscious entity at death, does at some time return to this mortal life, reassume the habitaments of flesh, and go about another mortal experience. This is stating the doctrine shortly, but sufficiently clearly and explicitly for you to understand the real pith and point of the question. At first, it was doubtful, and it is still doubtful, whether this return to Earth was for once only, or whether it would be repeated on subsequent occasions. Also, whether the present existence was only a reincarnation of souls that had previously existed in other bodies at other periods of the world's history. We apologize for the somewhat hazy character of the argument, but the fault is not ours. Naturally, the matter is being systematized. By whom? This guy is like on a trance, just saying this like in a bed or something. Who is taking care of what? And when are they going to show up? I'm sorry, like, we apologize for the somewhat hazy character of the argument, but the fault is not ours, is quite a thing to say while you're in a trance. The present existence is one in a series of sequential existences, and there is no knowing how many times any one of you may have adorned this terrestrial sphere on previous occasions. Furthermore, today there are certain philosophical reasons, as they are called, alleged as to why this consistent and continual reincarnating should take place. In many respects, they have a strong family likeness to the original suppositions of Kardec, the Kardashians. In one or two, they are tinged with that Oriental footnote. Oriental, when it's in the late 1800s, means like the Arab nations. The Orient was considered the Middle East for the most part at this time. The Arab nations. The Orient was considered the Middle East for the most part at this time, known as like East Asia or the Far East, and associated with like China, Malaysia, Japan, etc. But the Orient at the time that this is being written is actually in like the Arab states, the Turkey, Iran, Syria kind of area. And it's kind of interesting that they just kind of move where East is as the empire moves around. But yeah, I hate using the term Oriental, because not only does it become associated, it becomes a racist term in the 1900s, if not before then. But it's also just when you say it, people in the modern era assume it means a different area than it's actually referring to. And if you don't know when something is written, then you don't really know which area they're referring to until you like maybe get some context clues. Just say a country. Say a people. Say something specific instead of saying Oriental. All the Eastern people have the exact same philosophy. Sure. This is where the East versus West, the Eastern philosophy and the Western philosophy and all that crap like the terms that are completely useless. Those got started around this time. Thanks, British Empire. That Oriental philosophy, which is the essence of the theosophical cult. In all cases, there is not the slightest warrant in the laws of nature, the principles of being, or the constitution of man to give the slightest foundation for the reality of these assertions. We say this deliberately, painfully, if you will, with the full consciousness of the shock at such a declaration may be the means of conveying those who are wedded to this doctrine. We say it respectfully, we say it earnestly, and we say it because loyalty to truth as we understand it commands us to say it. We should palter with the truth if we minimized in the slightest degree the statement we have just made. What are you? In all cases, there is not the slightest warrant in the laws of nature, the principles of being, or the constitution of man to give the slightest foundation for the reality of these What are these assertions? Make a sentence that actually says something. Stop doing sequels to your sentences that say nothing. This is how you don't hear me read the pamphlets whenever I'm in the videos. So, okay, going backwards. All cases not slightest warrant. In many respects, they have a strong family likeness to the original subdivisions, tinged with philosophy. Furthermore, today there are certain philosophical reasons alleged as to why this consistent and continual reincarnating should take place. In all cases, there is not the slightest warrant in the laws of nature for the reality of these assertions. Are they debunking the philosophical reasons? I'm going to just read further. After all, only assertions. It will be our duty to vindicate the very serious assertion we have made. Those of you who are familiar with the tenor of our teachings through this instrument for a period exceeding a quarter of a century will know that we've always consistently laid before you certain definite views as to the philosophy of existence, and we have ever done this with a keen sense of our responsibility. Did somebody get called out as wrong? Never have we lightly stated an opinion in regard to any matter during the whole of that period, and we are just as conscious of our responsibility to truth and to you as ever we were. What does this reincarnation mean then? Why, that we come back and live over again. Yes, at first the suggestion was that you came back and lived a life over again. John Jones come back and is another John Jones. Mary Brown is another Mary Brown, but that was too tame. But this was too tame. To be John Jones over again had no particular enchantment for John Jones. But if John Jones could come back as Ramses the Great, are we complaining about the Cleopatra reincarnations now? I'm glad I'm here for this. Or if he could come back as John Jones and say, oh, once I was Ramses the Great, why then a halo of romance surrounded poor John Jones, and though John Jones was not worth a good hearty kick for his present virtues, yet his past glories invested him with dignity to which he had no right. And Mary Brown, if she could be some great queen, the Queen of Sheba, for instance, in some previous reincarnation. This is before the big Tutankhamun and Cleopatra craze, because otherwise they would have said Cleopatra. Queen of Sheba was the common lady to be, because she's in the Bible and she tries to bump it up with King Solomon. In some previous incarnation, she would feel that it was not so bad to have to bear the not aristocratic cognomen of Brown, and would doubtless consider too that when she returned once more to spirit life, the fluidic sphere, if you please, the fluidic sphere, a little interregnum of disagreeable experience as Mary Brown would be amply compensated for. But why did not Ramses and where they were? Why not just stop when you're Ramses? That's a good question. Oh, it was their duty to come down and be Jones and Brown. And so was the world one whit the better for having done it? What difference did you make in this incarnation? Why were you even here? Wow, it's asking you make in this incarnation. Why were you even here? Wow, it's asking the hard questions. I kind of like this. Wish they would have kept doing this for the next 100 years. It was something like the jackdaw of rhymes after the curse was pronounced. Nobody seemed a penny the worse. And after the blessing of the presence of Sheba and Ramses, the world did not appear to be a penny the better. Then again, we are told it is because of their past that they have come back again. And how is this? Well, you see, sometimes when people having excellent opportunities for doing good miss them, misuse them, palter with the chances they have, and do ill instead of good, as a punishment for their misuse of the favors of God, they have to come back and be Browns, Joneses, and Robinsons. Wow. Browns, Joneses, and Robinsons. The curse, the deep curse. Lions, tigers, and bears. Suffer hardships, be clothed in rags, possibly be chivied by the police for wrongdoing, yet 5 years penal servitude, and possibly end their lives on the gallows. Ooh, dark. There is, of course, no provision in the world beyond for the correction of the failures of this life. It is necessary that God should send these people back that they may be punished here. The wisdom of such an arrangement we leave to your own consideration. Oof. They're talking about the hard stuff. I like this. It started with we're some made up Asian master, and it's ended up in cite your sources. On the other hand, if they had lived pure, noble, intelligent, and self-sacrificing lives, but have withal suffered and been despitefully used by the world, then shall they be born again and enjoy life, be well fed, handsomely clothed, decently housed, and esteemed by their fellows, just as though intellectual gifts, moral courage, and spiritual graces could be rewarded by quartern loaves, legs of mutton, and new clothes. We leave the oddity of this consideration again to your wisdom. And on one other point, at first you remembered and retained your identity, ultimately you lost it. That is to say, as a man you would be reincarnated as a man at first. Subsequently, the idea had to be remodeled, and the alarming proposition was placed before you that, although you were man this time, you might, and possibly would, be a woman this time. And while we think of it, that perhaps accounts for the appearance of what is called the new woman today. Is there any era where people are not complaining about how women be doing? A man and a woman. It is getting a little confused. Nope, there is no era in which people don't complain about this. The difficulty will be, of course, if you have many reincarnations, to keep trace of them, and you may possibly by and by, if you ever should remember them all, get the series slightly mixed and speak of things you did as a man when you were really a woman. How often were these reincarnations to take place? Once? Oh no, once in every so many thousand years. Which is the right, Kardec or Blavatsky? If only once, not once in so many thousand years. If once in so many thousand years, then not only once. Another difficulty, a kind of conundrum we've confessed we are not capable of solving in any rational form. And why should the reincarnation take place repeatedly at these long intervals? From a philosophical point of view, it was said, because the development of the universe is in certain series of operations, there are so many rounds of existence, and each round or period of development brings forward its own particular and peculiar form of life. And each round of development at a certain point brings forward a certain quantity of human life. As the development rises higher and higher, and the kind and quality of human life improves in expression, and as it is requisite for the soul to have every possible experience of the universe, it is necessary for the human being to be incarnated on every round or stage of progress the world passes through. We are stating what is possibly in the mind of some of you here tonight. We are not exaggerating in the slightest particular the statements received, but unfortunately, while in justice we must do honor, we are obliged to extend the criticism. Who are we? If it is because it is necessary for the soul to pass through all the experiences of the development of the universe, that reason is sufficient. And the other reason, that is, to punish or reward the soul, or because of the consequences of the soul's misdeeds, it must be incarnated and reincarnated, is not necessary to the argument. They are mutually destructive arguments. One alone is quite sufficient to rest the assertion upon. But suppose they are both true. Suppose they are true. Beyond that, we are not prepared to go. So basically, either humans have to be present for all stages of reality's development, or humans need to come into reality to deal with past incarnations. Which is it? I mean, that's fair, because I don't really see any logic to the humans coming here to deal with stuff assertion. I think we might just have to show up. Like, maybe we just show up because it's our job. Punching in that 9 to 5. Punching in that 24 to 24. Having seen the situation then, and we have stated it fairly and frankly, let us go into a little more detail. Where does man come from? Some people favor the miraculous creation of the race and say that God made man. No doubt he did, but not in the sense that those who make the statement believe. Some people say the race evolved, was evolved by natural law, and has progressed and developed through the principles of natural selection and variation. Ah, that is materialism. Well, it is materialism unless you're willing to admit something else, that the evolution of the universe is only possible because the intrinsic life of the universe is the divine spirit of God himself. Materialism with a difference, you see. And if the divine is involved in the constitution of the universe, the divine will be evolved through the elements of the universe into such form, order, condition, and development as the divine intelligence designs and wishes. So matter itself is the divine. Now we come to another question. If then the race represents the evolution and formation of the divine and the organized and conscious existence of man, we may be willing to concede the point without reservation that all the preceding history of the world represents the labor of the universe building up the possibilities of humanity. And now let us see what this humanity means. Man is a conscious entity embodied in the organization you are familiar with, working through that organization and controlling it by reason of its various organs and their dependent functions. It is the man, the conscious entity. Consciousness and identity are facts inseparable from the life of intelligent humanity. Very good. But organization and personality are equally necessary to contribute to and maintain the identity that man possesses. Query. If death is the removal of the individual without the correlative possession of personality and its consequent organization, consciousness, and identity, what has become of the man? You cannot comprehend. We frankly confess that we also cannot comprehend. Man's existence apart from consciousness, identity, and personality is to us a thing inconceivable. If immortality means the perpetuation of personality and identity, then must the people of the spirit world be as real men and women in their state as you are in this. This has been the kind of gospel which we have taught you for over a quarter of a century. This is the philosophy we still adhere to, for the reason that, from our observation of life in the spirit world, we know it represents the life and character of the inhabitants of that world. We have been told that we have not progressed enough to comprehend this doctrine of reincarnation. We have been told that we have dealt so much in the intellectual and logical side of things that we have become relatively materialistic in our conceptions and cannot realize the spiritual significance of this doctrine. Well, we are rather proud of our inability to stultify our experiences and convictions, and if loyalty to truth is a means of keeping us in lower spheres, we are delighted to remain there, where reason holds her court and fantasy has no followers. This is an amazing thing to read from the late 1800s. Holy heck. Someone just throwing down in this one. I can see why I needed to read through this a little bit more, because it would have been hard to just kind of like go through this in one go without reacting to it. You are brought back into this world as the consequence of your past life. That is to say, if you have accumulated a karma that must be outworked in the world in which that karma was originated, then if this law holds good, it follows that you have no right to alleviate the wretchedness of men. They are in their present incarnations outworking the evil karma they generated in their previous incarnations. You have no right to praise men for their goodnesses and greatness, for they are only manifesting the karma which they accumulated in some previous existence, and they are good because they cannot help being good, and the others are bad because they cannot be otherwise. And you, contemplating your fellows, may say with a cynical egotism, I stand on my own feet, while the world may grow callous, and all the happy ideals of brotherhood and love that humanity is striving to reach, all the comradeship and sweetness of life, all the bright purposes that the divinity within man is unfolding may be dismissed as the baseless fabric of a dream, that the hard facts of life have cruelly crushed out the heart of man. Last Sunday night we said of this doctrine of reincarnation that it was an intellectual monstrosity, a philosophical absurdity, and spiritually untrue. We speak knowingly. You have followed us with a sufficient care in what we have said to know that we do not speak unadvisedly when we say from the examination we have made of this question, we have come to the conclusion that the doctrine is a theory, and a theory only, formed by men in the infantile past of the race, when they did not have the knowledge of man's nature after death that your spiritualism has provided you with today. No word of harshness have we for those in the past or in the present who have endorsed the doctrine. Our criticisms are of the doctrine itself. Finally, remember the crucial question we submitted a moment or two since, and also remember that every returning spirit tells you, I am your father, mother, friend, brother, sister, as the case may be. I am the woman, the man, the woman that I was while here. How are these personalities to dispossess themselves of their personalities? How are they to cast aside their past consciousness, their memories, achievements, convictions, and prejudices? How are they to shrink themselves into nothingness that they may come back again into this life? Is the world beyond so poor a place that it holds the possibilities of neither training nor correction? Yeah. Why do we show up here having not been corrected for anything? Isn't there a place we're supposed to go before we reincarnate again to like kind of like unfuck ourselves? Is the world beyond so poor a place? Is it so small a place that it can give no punishment, confer no reward? Is the life beyond so badly balanced that its inhabitants must come back into this lower world to gain knowledge and experience? If so, why not let man stay permanently in the world in which he lives? Why send him out of it if it has to be to the scene of all his rewards and punishments? You preach the doctrine of progress. You say life rises upwards and onwards in ever ascending gradations, and you argue that the spirit world is a loftier plane of existence than the material world, that spirit is a lighter, higher, and noble thing than matter. As spiritualists trusting to experience, reason, knowledge of the laws of nature and the principles of being, what warrant can you find for the return of the spirit into fleshy embodiment? The laws of nature are against it, and the final conclusion is that, having been obtained in the manner we have shown you, the dogma may be placed on one side as one of those phases of thought that riper knowledge has enabled you to outgrow. Reincarnation is unnecessary because the world beyond provides all that is needful to counteract and compensate all the errors and sorrows that man may pass through in this life. The divine principle of evolution, the outward and visible manifestation of the divine reality as it slowly unfolds the hidden powers of being, urges the organic universe upwards and onwards, every fresh stage marking a higher degree in the ascent of the cosmos, of which man stands at the apex. Evolution represents a divine involution here on the earth. Death is the parting of the ways, the crossing of the line of force, whereby you shed the outer form and take upon you the higher condition. It perpetuates the identity, consciousness, personality, and individuality of your life here, and leads you forwards and upwards for everlasting as yourself, always and ever yourself, never to lose the sense of consciousness and personality, but ever expand and beautify in a life of progression through the great beyond forevermore. Never again will you assume the bonds of matter when the beneficent hand of death has drawn aside the veil of flesh, and God's voice bids you to come up higher into the house of many mansions, never suggesting that you should descend again to live in the world if left as a means of purifying you for the higher life that lies beyond. And that's all that's in here. Like that there's blankness after this. It's so weird. Um I I just this launches straight into it without ever really explaining who's talking and why they're saying these things, and they keep on speaking as we. Um, and the title of this thing, through the mediumship of Mr. JJ Morse, means that this is channeling. Like some spirit is telling you this about the spirit world, and they're saying that reincarnation, as we were talking about it in the late 1800s, is bunk. Which I mean, I think that the spirit should have a vote in this, and it should like definitely make sense that a spirit would be able to advise us on this. But what a strange, like, this basically reads as an organization kind of debating back and forth over how things work. It's kind of like a photograph um in the process of development of spiritualism. Um, and I'm really glad that Evanston, Illinois limited edition books reprinted this in 1973. Um, Not really sure why, but yeah, an interesting picture of the reincarnation debate. Um, Really wish that that spirit could have left like a phone number or a maybe a Tumblr handle or something, so I could like talk to them about more of this stuff. This is pretty interesting. And I'm going to do a full read through of this one pretty soon. I think. I think this one's definitely worth having on the channel. It's pretty interesting material to examine. Spiritualism has at least done one thing. It has democratized the spirit world. It has lifted you to its level and made you feel that you are near akin even to the spirits in the land beyond the boundary of Earth. So it's like spirits from beyond advising a bunch of spiritualists on spiritualism, mentioning theosophy at the same time and talking about how theosophy isn't entirely correct. All right. I'm glad that the spirits themselves kind of weighed in on this debate because I think that they have a lot of stakes in this. Like they don't have skin in the game by definition, but they've got like ether in the game. Um Gosh, I'm gonna have to follow up on this and see if I could find anything about this Tien San T person, because it's so weird. The text of this really kind of flies in the face of channeling a TNCNT entity. It's so strange that you would need to say that you're someone else to deliver this thing that is against the concept of needing to be someone else. So yeah, I'll have to look up more about JJ Morse. Sounds like he had some interesting things to say, or somebody in him had interesting things to say, and maybe this thread gets picked up in another tract or another book somewhere. So when I track that down, I'll bring it to you and do some more live reads and reactions of it. Until then, uh, this has been the Spirit's View of Reincarnation pamphlet. This has been JJ Morse, and this has been Felix Warren. Ciao.